Have you ever heard of a genius whose ideas were so out there, so ahead of their time, that the world just, well, it ignored them for half a century? Today, we're diving into the incredible work of just such a thinker, the sociologist Norbert Elias.
And that right there, that's the central mystery of his life. I mean, here's a guy who came up with a totally revolutionary way of seeing human society, but for decades, the academic world basically acted like he didn't exist. How does a mind that brilliant stay in the shadows for so long? Well, that's exactly the question we're going to answer.
To solve this puzzle, we've got to start with the man himself. You see, his ideas weren't cooked up in some quiet, cozy library. Nope, they were forged in the fire of one of the most chaotic periods in history. His life story, that's the key to unlocking his life's work.
See, unlike a lot of thinkers, Elias's ideas weren't just abstract theories. They were a direct result of his own lived experience. He didn't just study history from a distance. He got swept up in its most powerful and sometimes most destructive currents.
I mean, just look at this timeline. His life reads like a history of the 20th century's biggest upheavals. He was a German Jew who fought in the trenches of World War I as a teenager. He had to flee his home to escape the Nazis in 1935. For decades, he lived as a refugee, a total outsider, and he only got the recognition he deserved right at the very end of his incredibly long life.
And his whole experience, of being an outsider, it completely shaped his thinking. He had zero interest in following the latest academic fads. And his background wasn't just in sociology, he studied medicine, philosophy, and psychology. This unique mix gave him a point of view that just didn't fit into the neat little boxes of the academic world at the time.
It was this outsider perspective that let him see a huge, fundamental flaw in the way we tend to think in the West. He basically spent his entire career fighting one single powerful idea, the myth of the isolated individual.
Okay, so the traditional view, the one most of us just kind of take for granted, sees each of us as these separate, self-contained people, and society is this big external thing that acts on us. Well, Elias came along and said, nope, that's completely backward. He argued there is no separation at all. We are fundamentally social creatures. An individual just can't exist outside of a web of relationships with other people.
He even came up with a great name for this flawed concept, Homo Clausus, which literally means the closed person. He saw this idea that each of us is like a sealed-off container as a massive barrier to understanding how we actually live. It puts up this false wall between me on one side and society on the other.
So, if the whole closed person idea is a myth, what's the alternative? Well, Elias offered this powerful new way of seeing things. We're not islands. We're all nodes in a vast, interconnected human web.
This quote from Elias just nails it. He's saying that even if you were a castaway on a deserted island, you're not truly alone. Why? Because you still carry inside you the language, the memories, the habits, that entire human network that you grew up with. You can't escape the web, because you are the web.
And he gave this web a technical name, a figuration. A figuration is basically any web of people who depend on each other. So your family, your workplace, your friend group, even your entire country, these are all figurations. They're the constantly shifting patterns of relationships that we're all a part of.
Elias himself used a brilliant analogy to explain it. A dance. Okay, picture this. One person starts moving. Then a second person joins in, reacting to what the first person is doing. Then more people join. Pretty soon, a collective pattern emerges. No single person is controlling the whole thing, but everyone's actions are shaping and being shaped by everyone else. That is a figuration.
Okay, so how does this totally radical idea connect back to our mystery from the beginning? We've seen the outsider life, we've seen the revolutionary theory. Now let's see how the world finally caught up with Norbert Elias.
This timeline is it's wild. He wrote his absolute masterpiece back in the 1930s, but it took until the late 1960s for people to even start paying attention. Can you imagine? He didn't get his first full-time university job until he was 59 years old. His ideas literally had to wait for decades until the rest of sociology was ready to hear them.
And I love this quote because it shows that even after he finally got famous, he was still kind of frustrated. People started calling him a classic, lumping him in with the old founding fathers of the field. But he saw himself as the total opposite. Not an ending, but a brand new beginning, a true innovator.
And that's it. That's the solution to our mystery. All those long years he spent in the wilderness, his refusal to just follow the intellectual fashion of the day, those weren't weaknesses. They were his greatest strength. Being an outsider is what gave him the freedom to create a path so new, so different, that it took the rest of the world 50 years just to catch up.
And that leaves us with a final thought, right? A question that Elias's work forces every single one of us to ask ourselves. We really like to think of our lives as our own individual stories, but what if we're all just dancers in a much larger performance? What are the invisible webs, the figurations that are shaping your choices, your feelings, your identity, right here, right now?